Welcome, everyone. You are about to embark on a journey through the universe as you indulge in this extraordinary essence of enlightened, empowered, evolved. Let the show begin in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Just in time. Greetings, everyone. I'm Luke Bryan Smith, and welcome to Enlightened, Empowered, Evolve, where we educate, motivate, and liberate you through enlightening dialogues, empowering music, and evolving content. I know everyone's doing well and everything is unfolding perfectly. I'm excited yet again because my next guest is a multi-faceted teacher of the healing arts who supports entrepreneurs, professionals, and artists to overcome chronic discomfort, disconnection, and burnout. He's also the developer of Anytime, Anywhere Awareness, a certified practitioner of the field. How do you say that?
That's the Feldenkrais method.
Feldenkrais Method. Thank you for that assistance, sir. Facilitator of the art of circling. Wow, amazing. Without further ado, I introduce to you Seth Dillinger. How are you doing today, Seth?
I'm good. Thanks for having me here, Luke. I really appreciate the invitation. And, from what I've seen and what you just said, I definitely get the sense of, positive vibe and education here. And I love that music is part of it. So, yeah, it's great to be here.
Absolutely. And I also have to reciprocate that by saying that I believe that time is one of our most precious assets. And for you to spend some of your time, to choose to spend some of your time in the history of your timeline here with me on Enlightened, Empowered, Evolve, I just want to extend my sincerest gratitude to you. Thank you
Mm,
very much, sir, for being here with me.
I appreciate that. That feels good. And,
Yes, yes.
I mean, we're here on a podcast and people are listening, but I just feel like even saying for you to say that,
Right,
a lot of people in daily life, we don't express these things to each other, that
right,
the value that we're giving to each other, and just
right,
to underline that is really important.
right, right. Yes. I've I can say life or the universe or God has really humbled me throughout my life
Mm,
to the point where now I do know what's really valuable to me. And I
mhm,
do understand that monetary value, currency, whatever, we do need that,
mhm,
in this, especially in this Western culture. And it does actually contribute to giving us more time, the more, uh, financially um, free freedom that we have. But none of that would even matter if you didn't have time, if you were out of time or your health. So I have to highlight that
mhm.
even to myself every morning. I'm thankful for another, new day and just for just my health and
Right,
even if I'm going through something, just thankful
right.
that I'm able to do what I'm doing and for the people that I feel that I attract into my experience, some on purpose, some unconsciously, but just everything to me contributes to my growth and yes. So, Seth, let's just get right into it, man.
Mhm.
Multifaceted teacher of the healing arts. Let's give us a little bit of insight and breakdown as to what that it all entails from you and how did that unfold?
Yeah, yeah, great. Um, well, if I start with what's going on now, I run
Right,
a program called Grounded Connection. So this is a 16-week group coaching program,
right,
but all of what goes into it took the last 10 years to put together. And I mean, kind of in the similar vein to what you were saying, I mean, I get the sense that you've been on a journey, and the fact that you're here, didn't happen overnight.
right, right.
So the
Oh,
last 10
I was
years
gonna
I've been,
say though, I was gonna say, and excuse me, I was gonna say those that know, know. That's all. I had to, it just felt right to say it after you said that. I
yeah,
apologize.
yeah,
Go ahead,
yeah,
Seth.
yeah. Um, so there's different, the grounded Connection program, part of what's unique about it is that we work on many different levels. In my own journey, I had to pick up these things one at a time, but the reason I underline the various things that I do is that we can pick up a particular practice. For example, someone begins to meditate, right? all kinds of benefits to meditation, but let's just say that that's the only thing the person does, right?
Mm.
So then they get really good at being quiet and sitting on their cushion and going in. So there's ways that we can do really well in one area to the neglect of others. And that was kind of, an experience I had. My first, if I go back about, a little over a decade where I was in a place of feeling pretty lost, and I could say more about that, but like in the
Right.
point where I sort of tried to turn things around and I didn't know what I was going to do in life, the one thing I thought is maybe I can improve my health, and I
Mm.
started running, and then I found out about this thing called yoga, which a bunch of people do, but I had no idea what it was. Tried different things, and then I discovered this funny word that we were playing with before, the Feldenkrais method,
Mm.
which is a practice that revolves around movement and body awareness. Although what I like to say to people is this is actually a wisdom practice disguised as a movement practice, because it's something that can help you if you have pain, to reduce the pain, or if you're athletic and you want to go to the next level, it can help you with that. But
Right.
it's something where the creator of this method, Moshe Feldenkrais, he understood that when we move our body, we do so because our brain sent that message to the muscles. So
Mm.
if we slow it down and really play with what's going on, we're actually playing with brain patterns. And so even before, like today, it's all the rage to talk about, we can reprogram our brains and that kind of thing. But
Right.
he understood this, in 1940, 1950, and back then. Um, so this is where I began, and I got incredible benefits from that. But there was a stage where I was doing my Feldenkrais practice, and I would feel great in my body, and then I would go to socialize, and suddenly I'm comparing myself to the people I'm with or whatever. So the
Oh.
limits of that practice I kind of bumped up against in those situations.
Mm.
The other practice you mentioned in the beginning, the art of circling, is actually all about bringing awareness to an interaction. So when we're talking to each other, what's that like? Or if I feel like I don't, know what to say,
Right.
well, circling is actually a practice where we go into interpersonal situations and we practice different pieces of a conversation, even though that's not how it unfolds in real life. It's like we learn the different aspects, and above all, circling is about how can we take a conversation that's like on the surface and it's like, hi, how are you doing, nice weather today, and actually go down to something meaningful and
Add some
find.
depth to it.
That's right.
Yes. And it's sort of like an exercise, if you will, if I'm correct. Oh, okay.
Yeah, so circling, it happens in different contexts,
Right.
and there's sort of different forms of it. But typically, a circle, so-called a circle, is a situation where you may have, 3 or 4 people sitting in a circle, or if you do it as I often do on Zoom, it's kind of a virtual circle.
Right.
But you'll have a facilitator, and
Mm.
you might have a person who's the sort of the center of attention, and they might just begin by sharing something of what's happening,
Right.
and then the facilitator's just basically drawing them out. Like, when you have a really good friend who just is willing to listen and you realize, oh,
Mm.
you're really listening to me. And we're trying to create a situation where the person feels like, wow, I can actually talk about things that I normally don't talk about.
Mm.
And then the other participants in the circle can be, drawn in. Like if I was circling you and we had 3 other people there and you shared something and I saw someone like make an expression on their face, I'd say, oh, what's
Right.
going on for you right now? And then they would
Right.
share,
Oh,
you know.
okay. I see.
So
So how
that's
did,
one.
oh, go ahead. Sorry about that.
No, no, no. Yeah, yeah.
No, I was just going to say, how did you come to find, this art of circling? I mean,
Mhm.
someone just happened to just share it with you one day, or you just did your own research and stumbled upon it and resonated with you? How did that happen?
Yeah. So I actually found it right here on YouTube.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
I was listening to a series of podcasts by the cognitive scientist and psychologist named John Vervaeke. And
Mm.
he's a professor at the University of Toronto. And he's got this, it's a 50-part lecture series called Awakening from the Meaning Crisis.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's profound. And it's like what's going on in the world today? You know, like why are more and more people lonely? Why are more people
Mm.
feeling, you know, disconnected, or suicide rates are even
Right.
going up? Like talking about a lot of the problems, and you know, and then crises after crises, what's going on with the environment or the
Right.
economy or the state of politics today.
Right.
But he highlights the meaning crisis, which is to say, there's all these problems that humanity faces.
Hmm.
But if we're going to solve them, we also need to know how to communicate with each other and
Right.
collaborate. And that's missing now.
Right. Right.
And
That's amazing. Wow.
yeah, so he does this long series, and he goes all the way back to the Greek philosophers, and he sort of walks through it slowly till today. And it's really a deep thing. But
Yeah.
when he gets to the end, he sort of said, well, you know, it's not all gloom and doom. Like there are some new things happening today that are beginning to show signs of hope. And he says one of them is that people are really beginning to tap into this idea of collective intelligence.
Mm.
You
Right.
know what you know, I know what I know, but when we come together and we really resonate, we can do something that's, you know, it's more like 1+1=3, not 1+1=2. Like, how can we do that? And so he says, there are these communities, and he says, there's the practice of circling. And I'm like,
Mm.
what's that? Because I just spent 50 hours watching this whole thing,
Right.
you know, and then I'm like, well, what can I do? And so, yeah, I found the practice online after that. And that was about 3 years ago now. So I've been doing it since.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm a student of life and of philosophers as well. Even when you spoke about the Greek philosophers, I've read the book. I forgot the title of it, but it's Marcus. I think it's his only book, Marcus Aurelius.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and yeah, I love some of his favorite thing. Probably the most famous saying is "Know thyself," and
Right.
that's exactly what I work on every single day is
Yeah.
learning more about myself. But
Right.
even in regard to like how you found the art of circling by who was the man that you were listening to?
So I was listening to John Vervaeke, and
Yes,
mhm,
there's another professor, and now it has nothing to do with this, but it tells you. I just want to show our similarities because I find a lot of my information on YouTube as well, and I started listening to this man named Brian Cartwright, and what he talks about is neurogenesis, which is the recreation of brain cells that you can, and the regeneration of brain cells and how to um, prevent or slow down and even prevent all things like Alzheimer's and
mhm,
Parkinson's and things as well.
right.
And he's a professor out of San Francisco Institute um, of Integral Studies. Yeah, and that's him right there. Yeah, but in his book is this the
Mhm,
neurogenesis diet, but I found him on YouTube first, just browsing, trying
right.
to update some of this programming in here just to learn different things. And
Right.
I just found myself just like you listening to him. Is that how you found the Feldenkrais guy as well?
So Feldenkrais, that was, as I said, so I started with Feldenkrais like 2011, 2012. And at that time, yeah, I was just in this place of looking for different things to do. I think I would put something like wellness or mind body or something
Right,
into Google like almost every day and keep
right.
searching. And I was actually searching for something called the Alexander technique,
Oh wow.
because that's a different, I mean, it's a related thing, but it's
Right.
different. But I have a musical background, and so some of
Oh
my musical friends had done the Alexander technique, and I happened to find a teacher who does Alexander and Feldenkrais, and then I thought, what's this Feldenkrais thing? And kind of went from there.
wow.
There's two different practices. So um, you can go to a group class
Right.
where a Feldenkrais teacher is just verbally describing movements that people do while they're usually lying on the floor, although sometimes it's done sitting in chairs or standing. Or there's an individual practice. You can see I have a table over here. There's people who, you know, I work with hands-on doing
Oh,
that kind of,
okay.
but it's not about you know, massaging the muscles. It can be relaxing, but it's not about relaxation per se. It's actually about the what you said before, know thyself.
Self.
Yeah.
Right.
And one of
Right.
the ways we know ourselves is we have a body, right? And
Right.
we all know basic things about our bodies,
Right.
but when because in our society, we spend a lot of time doing what you and I are doing now. We're sort of sitting in front of the computer,
Right.
which there's all kinds of wonderful, magical things we can do.
Do.
But
Right.
if we don't use our bodies, we get to this point of like, there's just like blurry dark zones in there where we don't really know what's going on.
Right.
And if you imagine like you're watching the Olympics and you see one of these gymnasts and they're doing incredible things, well, they're strong and they're skilled and they're balanced and all this, but one thing you can almost imagine is they know exactly how their body works. They know exactly
Yeah.
where they
Right.
are in space, and
Mm,
it's like they carry an image of it in their head. And
right.
so the interesting thing with Feldenkrais is that we're actually working with kind of the image of the body.
Mm,
And
wow.
yeah, I mean, I
That's
could give you
amazing. No,
an
that's amazing.
example if you want. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Please do. Yeah.
Yeah. So like if you want, you can try this. But if you were to just
Okay.
like turn your head to the side
Okay.
and then back to the middle, right? And that's very simple movement, right? And you might sort of not think anything of it.
Okay.
But we could study that movement, right? So if I turn to the side and I think about my nose, right? Okay, so I can follow my nose, and I'm just touching my nose to sort of highlight it.
Yes. Yes.
But then if so, I'm looking to the right. But if I do the same movement, but instead I say I'm trying to hear what Lute is saying with my left ear,
Okay.
and I actually made a slightly different movement, right?
Yes.
And then if I say, well, let me go back to my nose and I notice my nose, or if I say, wait, I want to turn my right ear towards the back of the room. Now, each one of those things I said, you might say, why do that? Well, it feels different when I
Right.
think of doing it. And if I
Right.
do that for a while, like in a class, we might spend 45 minutes doing this kind of thing.
Okay.
Pretty soon, it's like I can feel where each of my ears and my nose and all the parts are. And I start noticing, well, my muscles are firing differently and
Hmm.
I'm using more of myself.
Wow.
So to move efficiently, our bodies, one thing we could say is, we use our whole self. Like someone who's picking up something really heavy, we tell them, bend your knees, right? Because if
Right.
they don't bend their knees, they're going to strain in one part of their body and they're not using the power of their legs. But
Right.
we can really get detailed with that. We can get to this point of like kind of like lighting up all the joints and all the places. And I'll tell you, so you're asking about how I started with it. Well, the first time I tried it, I just listened to a guided recording, do this movement, do that movement. I
Right.
stood up at the end and I said to myself, I didn't know it was possible to feel this good.
Wow. So it's
Yeah.
almost like, I mean, tell me if I'm wrong. Just in being intentional in all your movements. Is that what that is?
Well, it's interesting because in the practice, you're definitely very intentional. And what
Okay.
people will tell me is so it's not an exercise, it doesn't get sweaty, it's pretty slow
Right.
moving. But what people find is a little bit sometimes exhausting is the
Right.
way that you use your attention. So
Mm,
I keep asking people to notice particular, like as you turn your head, which side of your neck gets longer and which side of your neck gets shorter.
shorter. Mm,
You might not think about that, but if you
right.
keep attention, you can feel that, but you're also paying attention in a way, you know, that you don't normally do.
Wow.
Um, but it's so the idea is that, oh, so you were asking about intention. What I would say is there's a lot of intention in the practice,
Right.
but then when we finish the practice and we stop thinking about it, we just walk down the street. I would say when we're moving really well, we don't have to think about it at all,
Right.
but everything's functioning together. Because if we had to remember all the details of all the joints and everything, we could barely move at all.
Right.
But we sometimes dive into a depth of detail in the body that is new to most people, but then
Mm,
we let go and then we just
wow.
come back to moving spontaneously.
Well, that's just it sounds simple but complex at the same time. So
Mhm.
what is the I'm not sure if I'm asking the right question, but what is the overall intentioned outcome of doing this?
Yeah. Well, as I said before, I think of this as actually a wisdom practice.
Okay.
But if we just start with the body and how the body functions,
Right.
we are typically using more effort than we need to. Right.
Okay.
So again, if I try to lift something heavy and I don't bend my knees, uh, maybe I still lifted it.
Okay.
But when I do it, you might hear me make some grunting noise and like huffing and puffing, and I hold my breath, and afterwards, I think, oh, I might feel that tomorrow. Like that was more effort than was needed. Or
Mm,
just like, you get a friend to help you, and it's like, oh, this is manageable, right?
right.
But we often do that. We're like, well, I'll just take care of this myself, and we ask ourselves to do more than we can. Uh,
Mm,
for example, if I'm lifting something really heavy like that and it's a little
right.
more than I can do, I might grit my teeth. I might go like
Yes.
that. And you can just see, did that help me to lift? No,
No.
but it did do something. And so what the practice can do is it can help us highlight unnecessary efforts and get
Mm,
rid of them. Like I was teaching the class the other day. This is kind of a funny thing, but I was just having people move their tongue between their teeth very slowly and really pay attention to how it feels. But then as they're doing it, and we do it for a while, every once in a while, I'd say, "Are you breathing?" And someone
oh
would
yeah.
realize, "Oh, I stopped breathing because
I
I'm
just did.
yeah,
I
yeah,
just stopped breathing too.
right."
Soon as
Well,
you told me that, it's like I put my focus on just my tongue and stopped breathing to focus
right,
more on that. Why did
right,
I do that? Why
right.
do people do that?
Well, I would say, I mean, first of all, I didn't give you a lot of context, so you might be like, well, this is weird. I don't usually do tongue movements and like pay a lot of attention to it. And it's not like, well, gosh, as soon as I met you, I could see you needed to improve the use. Like, no, but so in other words, it might feel like an almost arbitrary thing,
Right.
but it is a unfamiliar thing. And then if I'm
Mm,
holding my breath in an unfamiliar situation, like
right.
go back to what I said about I'm in a social situation and I feel like, oh, they're talking about a subject that I don't know, and I start doing stuff like this, right? So the movement of the tongue is almost an excuse to notice that just by doing this simple thing, I started using all these other efforts. So when
Right.
yeah,
Wow. Wow, that's interesting. And wow. And I love hearing about things that I'm unfamiliar with. It just kind of confuses me and challenges me to think and to
yeah,
just to say, wow,
right,
yeah, that's
right.
amazing. So when you work with people, you usually work with them in person or online or both?
Yeah, so both. As I
Okay.
was saying, that so I can teach a movement class by just giving verbal directions.
Right.
Uh, I don't actually demonstrate the movements, and
Hmm.
that's really interesting too, because the idea there is, um, what typically happens. People go to a movement teacher, right? And the
Right.
assumption is, well, that person's an expert, and they probably move better than me, so what I should do is copy them.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
So you take that equation out of it so
That's
that
the
they won't
idea.
copy you.
Yeah, because the thing is, I mean, like if we talk about posture, like if you went and just Googled good posture, you can find all these checklists. Do this with
Right.
your shoulders, do that. But what
Yeah,
I would say,
back
right,
with the
right. And
shoulders. Yeah.
and it's funny because I sometimes I talk to people and I tell them what I do, and they start doing what you just, they're like, oh, he's
Oh
that,
my God, he's going to criticize me.
yeah, exactly.
Terrible posture.
Well, and it's that mentality, like I'm
Right.
being graded. But the
Right.
thing is, even that idea is like, what does it look like on the outside?
Mm,
I'd rather that people start noticing what it feels like on the inside,
inside.
right?
Wow.
And so what I would say is good posture is comfortable, right?
Mm,
And you might even see someone who, they look funny, they got a funny position. If they have no pain, I don't know if there's a big problem. I mean, if I see someone in a funny position, I get curious and I wonder there
right.
probably is something to improve there. But
Right.
you can see people who look straight and tall and they've actually got a lot of pain,
Pain.
right? Because
Right.
maybe they're holding themselves in that place rigidly.
Mm,
They
mm,
can't breathe, their chest is stiff, they might
right.
be grinding their teeth at night. So Yeah, it's really so an important piece for me, like, and this is one of the main pillars of the grounded connection program that I talked about, is
Right.
autonomy.
Mm,
So if I go to this person's movement class and they look like they're an expert, well, obviously I have, I can learn something from them. But
right.
if my idea becomes I'm going to be like that person, I'm
Mhm.
already trying to twist myself. Like, people have different capacities in their bodies.
Right. Different
So,
mechanics. Yes.
right.
Yes.
Because you see someone do the splits, it might not be a good idea for you. Like,
No, I know what you mean because I've tried it because of someone else before
yeah,
too. And I'm like, wait a minute, I haven't gotten there. They've been
right,
practicing and stretching for years. I haven't stretched in that capacity. So I
right.
can't do that. I'm going to tear something.
Yeah, exactly. And if you wanted to, let's say, increase your flexibility, still there's one way to do it is I'm going to go to the end of my range and then just push. But
Right.
that's a place where injuries happen.
Injuries. Right.
Or what we can do, and this is what's so interesting in Feldenkrais, is we can move towards a position and then we can start noticing, like, again, if I turn my head, I
Right.
could also notice, what? I actually, my left ear went a little higher. So if
Right.
I exaggerate it, I'm kind of doing that a little bit.
Right.
Someone else might turn and do that, right?
Right.
So you could say turn your head, and I do that and I think, okay, I succeeded, I followed the directions. But there's all kinds of details in there. And
Mm,
it could be that I'm turning my head, but I'm torquing it a little bit, and that's causing me a difficulty. But I never
right.
even noticed that little torque. So I slow it down. And then what we typically do, this in a group class would be more like I create a sequence, because you're teaching everyone at once. With an individual, I'm closely observing them and I'm sort of improvising a process for them. But what I would often do with someone is help them to discover a pattern they didn't know they had, right?
Mm,
That's sort of
right.
step one. And then the second step would be, if you turn your head and your head is tilting like this, that means when you turn your head, you probably never tilt it the other way. So let's actually explore that pattern that you never do. Not because you need it, but because it's going to put your brain into a new state of attention, because it feels different than, you go to a foreign country. On the one hand, you're a little disoriented, but on the other hand, like,
Right.
you're paying attention, right?
Right.
You're lit up.
Heightened
You're like,
awareness. Yes. Mhm.
right. So
Right.
we can use movement to do that. If I see that someone has a tendency to sit with their weight over here, well, I know that if I could just teach them to sit over here, that it's going to open something up. And I don't
Oh,
even always know
wow.
exactly what it's going to do, but I know if they're always here and they never put their weight over there, then they're limiting themselves in some way. So it's like, if we can teach them, you could have your weight here, you could wait there, something opens up. And to sort of like come back to this idea that it's not just a movement practice, because I understand I'm describing movement here,
Right.
but you feel different.
Right.
When you've moved into these places, and or if you stand up after the class and you feel tall and light, and like
Mm,
walking down the street doesn't feel like as much effort,
mm.
um it's like, well, I start thinking different thoughts. I start talking to people differently too, because it's not such a chore just to walk down the street. So
Wow. Wow. I never I never put all those things together. But that's amazing. That's
yeah.
absolutely amazing. So how would one come about connecting with you to seek your even
Hmm.
to
Right.
ask you questions in regard to this to see if they, I don't know
Yeah. Well,
what
people could
people. Okay, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
they could try out. I have a YouTube channel called Move with Seth, and I have some classes on that channel. Um,
Okay, so that's move with Seth on YouTube.
That's right. That's right.
Okay,
And so that has some of the classes for the one-on-one work. Um, I, it's not a easy to pronounce link, but I could give you a link if people want to contact me directly. For sure, be happy to talk to them.
yes,
Uh,
I think if I'm certain that you've sent me your links, but if not, I can
yeah,
make sure I have them all so that I can
Yeah,
incorporate them in the description of this this segment. So yes.
yeah.
Okay.
Well, one of the things that actually I would suggest is a really good place to start with some what I'm talking about
Right.
is I've created something that I refer to as the 5 foundations of presence.
Okay.
This actually comes from my Feldenkrais practice, but the Feldenkrais practice is, as I said, it's usually slow. It's like lying on the ground, and we need to set aside time and dedicate to our well-being.
Right.
But at the same time, we also need to have awareness when we're moving through a busy day, right? And so I've created something I call the presence mantra, where I took some of the key elements that we study in a Feldenkrais movement class, and I sort of made them into, I call it a mantra because there's 5 words, and I ask people to repeat the words, not because repeating the words is so important, but they each stand for something. So the
Mm,
5 words are breath, ground, space, sound, and light. And those are 5 parts of our experience that are always present.
right.
We're breathing all day long. We're always, supported by the earth underneath us.
Ground.
Yeah,
Right.
ground. We're always in a space, like I'm in this room. There's a wall really close to me here. It's further away over there. That
Right.
defines something about my experience. The sounds that are around me,
Right.
just like I know you producing music, and so you play a certain kind of beat, and someone feels one way, or you put a
Right.
different mood. But if you're just like in a store and there's a lot of stuff going on, people might not think of that as music, like, oh, I enjoy the sound of a store, but there's a kind of a rhythm in the
Rhythm.
environment,
Right.
right?
Right.
And you can pick up on that,
Right.
um, and be
Right.
aware of it. Or you could be the person,
Mm,
who sort of like seems to not be in tune with everything
right.
all
No,
around,
no, I get what you're saying. There is a rhythm. Sometimes I do stop in the middle of somewhere and I just sort of like
Yeah,
wonder why I'm in this transit sort of state. It's because I'm listening to what's going on and
right.
the music, like as you said, of what's going on.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Well, if you go into nature, right, and you listen, like it might be,
Right.
I don't know, wind, birds, like I don't know, some animal in the tree, the wind blowing through. There's actually a lot of different sounds happening at the same time,
Agree.
but it tends to sort of have a flow where it's all like connected, right?
Right.
And then you could, like, I don't know, pull out your phone and start, like, you could do something that would kind of like break the mood,
Right.
or you could be like, oh, I feel like I want to flow
With it.
with it.
Yes. That you
Exactly.
add to it that fits in there. I get what
Exactly.
you're saying. I
Exactly.
yes, it's interesting. Very interesting.
A lot of people work with the breath. I mean, this is so crucial, it's so important. But these other elements, what they do is they give people other ways to tune in. So,
Right.
like, ground actually relates to my posture,
Right.
and if let's say I'm tired or I'm depressed or something, I might kind of sink a little,
Mm,
right? And then if I
absolutely.
feel good, it's like I'm rising up
Rising up.
away from the ground.
Right.
And I
Right.
can notice that in the course of a conversation. Someone tells me I'm no good, and I
Right.
might kind of sink a little. But
Meow.
exactly, exactly. But if I've developed an awareness around that, right, I
Right.
can I can have an image of a long spine, and that can help me not only to have maybe better posture, but to like feel my dignity again, right? Like,
Mm.
I felt a little deflated there. I made myself small. Like, what kind of body language is this? It's like,
This.
oh,
Yes.
let me come back and find that. Um,
Wow.
so
Wow.
yeah, I mean, if people want to, they can access the presence mantra, which the 5 foundations of presence, and I think you have the link for that. But that's a really
Right.
nice way to sort of, because I give this away for free, but a lot of the people who've worked with me have told me, even before we started working together, just learning the presence mantra was
Mm.
such a big change for me.
Right.
Um, Light is the last one of the 5, and so it's nighttime here, but when you're outside, maybe the sun's coming from over here, right?
Right.
And if I turn too directly into the sun, I'm going to squint. right? And if I squint, like if I really exaggerate, it becomes a thing I do with my whole body, right?
Mm,
And
yes.
I mean, if we squint to protect our eyes if there's too much light, but it's another thing where and our eyes are also another place where we have a lot of tension. Or if our eyes are really clear and really moving, like the movement of your head begins with your eyes, right? And
Right.
so everything you do, I mean, unless you happen to not be sighted and then you have to rely on your ears,
Right.
our eyes, they occupy a huge portion of the brain, right?
Right.
And so
Yes.
again, getting people to notice their eyes is another thing that in everyday life is kind of just a nice entryway into another level of presence.
Amazing, Seth. Thank you very much for educating us, enlightening us, and giving us your amazing perspective. I really did appreciate that. I do appreciate that very much. We're down to about 2 minutes, and I just
Okay.
wanted to say thank you very much. And yes, I would love to have you on here again to even listen again. I enjoy listening, and I enjoy hearing uh, ideas and terms and studies that I've never heard before. And that's intrigues me very much, even if I don't quite understand everything. But yes, it sounds absolutely amazing. Just the human body and just everything in our consciousness is just how things tie together. It's just amazing. So thank you very much. And thank you everyone for listening and or watching. Be sure to check the links out in the description of this segment and, learn more about what Seth is describing here. It's amazing. Sounds absolutely amazing. And thank you. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, whatever platform you're watching and or listening, and like and leave comments, questions, help the platform grow, share it, share this amazing information as well. Thank you very much. Enlighten, Empowered, Evolve. See you soon.